even with a 9% sell-off, we are still in a risk-on environment with positive momentum with Bitcoin, even though short-term momentum has turned, the trend as far as momentum is concerned, we are still in a risk-on environment with the Bitcoin risk model. The trend is still bullish. This is looking at the trend, the larger swing moves, not the short-term price fluctuations. Again, the short-term price fluctuation, we had a 9% sell-off. Now we're rallying back up 5%. Short-term price fluctuations. What could happen is with this pullback or a deeper pullback, we could still end up moving to new highs, still end up, and again, we had a divergence on indicators and even diverged here with the risk-on signal here. Again, there was a divergence between the two. It could be that it forms a larger divergence. I've been talking about a possible triple divergence on the RSI or with momentum. Still see that. We could see that right here. But again, risk line is bullish. We're in a risk-on environment, and the Bitcoin trend is still bullish. If that changes, we'll get a bigger sell-off. Remains bullish with this 9% pullback, still exceed 100,000. Go to the next level of resistance at 110 to 115,000. Bitcoin remains in a risk-on environment, even with this pullback that has begun. We'll be watching it closely. Our trend signals are still bullish in the daily time frame and in the weekly time frame. The bulls are in control. Keep in mind, Bitcoin is stalling at the 161 expansion of Bitcoin's average price right here. Again, bouncing off Bitcoin's average price, getting back above the 100, back testing it and finding support there. I talked about that at the time. Open the door for the bulls to challenge the bearish downtrend, the series of lower highs and lower lows. The bulls won. The bulls are in control. That took us up here above 1.5 expansion, and now we have Bitcoin at the 1.61 Fibonacci expansion above Bitcoin's average price. So again, we're going to be watching. We stalled there here back earlier in the year after we had already peaked there in March. This is where we stalled in 2021, was at the 161. Now we can get above that. If we do, then you can go to the 2 or 3% expansion, Fibonacci expansion, which would take us to much higher levels, but we got to see the resistance level that we're at right now being cleared. Talked about that in the trend lines in this video. You'll see them. Right now we're stalling at those trend lines, and we're stalling at the 161 expansion of Bitcoin's average price. Now again, bears are to regain control. They would have to take out the 100 period. As long as we're above the 100 period here in the daily time frame, the bulls are in control. When you're above the 100 period, good things are happening, bouncing off of it. When you're below the 100 period, taking it out, bad things are happening. Here we tried to get above it. It failed. We dropped back below it. Rejection, rejection, rejection. Finally got above it here, and again went up, bounced off of it, and then went sideways. Again, when you are but good things are happening. When you're below it, bad things are happening. I'm a big believer in the 100 period moving average. Bitcoin is not hard to understand. It follows the 100 period moving average. My signals remain bullish. They remain that way. Can the bulls hang on to control as we're hitting this next level of resistance? We've just had a rally into resistance. Now what happens? Can the bulls clear it? Do the bears retake control? What happens? In order for a longer-term bearish case, you got to lose a 100, and then you got to drop below Bitcoin's average price. Here we bounced, and we talked about these bounces off of Bitcoin's average price in our 50-week moving average as well. But just be aware of this area, and if we end up clearing it, we can go to the next level of resistance, 110, 115,000. Above that would be the 2.0 Fibonacci expansion of Bitcoin's average price. Okay, a quick update the day before Thanksgiving here. I know everybody's busy traveling and looking at early Black Friday deals, so I'll try to be brief, but I just wanted to give you a quick update ahead of Thanksgiving, and then I'll do another update after Thanksgiving. But again, here on the weekly chart, we've turned off of resistance with Bitcoin. We sold off. We're getting a rebound today. Looking at these trend lines in the weekly time frame. Again, we're turning off these trend lines right here. This is from the low in 2021 to the higher low that's set up in 2022, excluding the shadows, and we turned off of that trend line. We overthrew this one right here, which is from the 2021 peaks. Now, again, I have the resistance above this level, whether we pull back and get above it or whether we try to get above it above 100,000. If we do, we can go to the 110 to 115,000. If we take our time reaching it, maybe as high as 120. That's the upper boundary of a parallel channel from these lows back over here. That's the next level of resistance. If we reverse off of this area, then there's risk of a pullback or risk of a complete reversal to change the trend. We'll be watching. Our momentum has shifted down, but the Bitcoin trend is still bullish. We'll be watching to see if it can remain bullish in the daily time frame. If it doesn't, then we'll be looking at the weekly time frame like we have right here. We'll be watching the weekly signals. Do they turn back to bearish? We've had two things happen with Bitcoin in the weekly time frame. First, we saw momentum turn back to bullish after we bounced off the 50-week moving average here and hit 52,000, a higher low. Signals, momentum signals, daily signals turn back to bullish, and then with that we saw momentum turn back to bullish in the weekly time frame. I talked about that. And then we were able to turn the trend when we broke this trend line right here. The bulls are back in control in the weekly time frame. My signals remain bullish in the daily and weekly time frame, except for momentum, which remains bearish in the daily time frame. So again, the bulls are in control. The two scenarios are that, again, we get a pullback here or a reversal. The third scenario be we overthrow this level and get a pullback or reversal, and that could take us into the low 100,000 area or as high as the trend line up here, the upper channel line, and 110 to 115,000. So I'm watching to see how this unfolds, but again, my signals turn back to bullish. Weekly time frame first with momentum down at these levels here after we rebounded off 52,000, and then with the trend. Talked about, again, a recession is coming. We still may, and if it hits in the first or second quarter, it still may go a lot higher. It's possible we reverse in this area. We're going to see it sooner rather than later. 2007, nobody thought it was going to happen. Started cutting. 3 months later, we were in recession. The Fed didn't even see it, and then right after that, the month after the recession started, they panicked and did an emergency cut, 75 basis points, and then a week later, at the meeting, they did another 0.5%. So again, the Fed oblivious to it, and again, recession indicators warning we're going to have a recession right now. So I'm watching this closely. Now, the dollar is falling right now, and that is helping Bitcoin. But as I've said, the dollar has risen, and so has Bitcoin. They've had a short-term positive correlation. Right now, the dollar is starting to turn down. Bitcoin's rebounding. Both have been rising together. One of them is wrong. One of them is wrong. It has to collapse if we're going to get a long-term bullish scenario for Bitcoin, and the dollar has broken out, and it's doing exactly what it did back in 2021. Pardon me. Bitcoin top. So there are risks here. I do think there's a possibility of a reversal here. If the bears can regain power, end up taking out the 20-week moving average. But my signals, which are correct, remain bullish from the breakout here. And again, momentum prior to that. My daily signals have been consistently bullish since 52,000, except for a few pullbacks, which I talked about along the way. But again, my signals remain bullish. Got that 9 count last week. I told you again, the 9 count could mark a peak, or we can go a little higher and it could mark a peak shortly thereafter. We'll be watching to see how this unfolds. Sold off. We're now trying to rebound. We'll see how we close by the end of the week. Can the 9 count give us a trend extension a little bit higher? Do we get an immediate reversal and then get some kind of sell-off? And again, if we do get above 100,000, you could stall at the low 100,000 area, 102, 105,000, somewhere in there. Go on to that next level of resistance. We'll be watching, but the 9 count is up here on Bitcoin. We got it on NVIDIA, turning off a major trend line of resistance as well. Go watch my stock videos. Talk about that. Link my latest stock video at the end of this one. Also had the 9 count on MicroStrategy. Had a dramatic drop. Could be a huge red flag warning for Bitcoin. So just keep this in mind as we're hitting the trend lines of resistance in the weekly time frame that I've been talking about. I warned you about the sell-off before it happened because we had divergences with the RSI and momentum. And then we also had on Sunday's close, we had this T. I made a video right before the sell-off happened. Before it happened, we closed on Sunday and started the Monday session long before the big 5% sell-off that continued. Sunday we had warning signs, and again the circle here, and again these are just short-term momentum signals saying, hey, watching for a pullback or if for a reversal. And then we got more with that bar right there. Now we're rebounding back up about 5%. We're going to be watching to see if momentum remains bearish or not. Momentum line turned bearish with the 5% decline right there on Monday. Balance of power still positive. Trend signal still positive. But we've gotten this 9% pullback on Bitcoin. Now we're trying to rebound. Are we going to try to challenge the previous peak at 99,000 and move above 100,000? Or do we get a bigger sell-off and then attempt it? Bulls to regain control and give us a reversal. We'll be watching, or I'm sorry, the bears. Do the bears give us a reversal? We'll be watching to see how that unfolds. Momentum is bearish. Trend is still bullish in the daily time frame. Weekly signals bullish for both. And weekly momentum turned back to bullish shortly after a 52,000 low here. We saw momentum turn back, and then right here, the little arrow, again, momentum signals turned back to bullish. And then we broke the trend line, and the trend signals began to turn back to bullish with that breakout there. The trend and momentum signals remain bullish in the weekly time frame. The bulls are in control. Again, my signals now here, I have the bars reflecting the trend here in the daily time frame. Again, my signals have been consistently bullish since the bounce off Bitcoin's average price. And again, the 52,000 low back to bullish right after we hit that, the 53,000 low, bottomed at 52,000, 53,000 signals started turning back up. Some pullbacks along the way. I've talked about those. I talked about expecting a bounce off the 100 period moving average, going up to the trend line, and then I talked about going higher than the trend line because we're warning that resistance, the March high, was going to be tested. We moved above 71,000 and told us we are likely going to break to new highs after the pullback. We predicted a pullback here, which was correct, which was a back test of the trend line. Told you that we were going to move to new highs and to be watching the 77, 78,000 area. If we got a breakout and called there, then the bulls could end up with a false breakout, top similar to the 2021 peak. I told you if we cleared 77,000, that again, extremely bullish, and that would be a sign of strength. Watch the weekly bar to see if we closed in strength or weakness with the presidential election week, and we closed in strength. We were going to get a rally ahead of the presidential election results. We did. Then we cleared that 77, 78,000 area in strength. Bulls are in control. The signals remain bullish in the weekly time frame, and here in the daily time frame, we formed this divergence. I warned you we would see a pullback soon. Still may exceed 100,000. The question now is this a counter trend, and we're going to get a deeper pullback, or going back up and challenging the highs, or we do it right here and now. Bears have their work cut out for them if they're going to flip everything back to bearish. Bulls remain in control right now. We could still form triple bullish diversions or firm a lower high on momentum here and the RSI and other indicators. I got more to share with you, but I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Please support the channel with the link directly below. If you find charts helpful, like the indicators, let me know that by supporting the channel today. Thank you for your consideration for that. And once again, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. More to share with you, though. I told you we were going to get the sell-off because we were forming these divergences. A 4-hour chart. We had this rising wedge. It broke down. We've sold off. We're trying to rebound right now, and I'll be watching to see what happens. Do we recover, try to exceed 100,000, or is this just a counter trend and we roll back over and get another leg down closer to the 200 period moving average here, currently around 83,000. Back the 20 period, which we're trying to bounce off of in the daily time frame, and start moving closer towards the 50 period. So again, be watching that. I had this divergence on prime parameter in the 4-hour time frame that played out very nicely, but again, it still might form a triple divergence, as I've talked about, if we can recover sooner rather than later. So far, Bitcoin has sold off just over 9%. Now it's recovering. It's up over 5% at the moment. Bitcoin getting a big, powerful rally back up, trying to get back above the 10 period moving average after losing it, and trying to bounce off our 20 period moving average, a blue line right there. 10 is a red. Currently, we're up 4.74%. Powerful rebound after dropping I talked about a triple divergence forming on the RSI. I'll show you that chart shortly. This sell-off may not be done, but if it is done, again, you might form a triple divergence sooner rather than later. I talked about that in my last update. See the RSI in a moment. Selling's not done. We still may go to a new high above 100,000, get a deeper pullback, and still end up reaching that level in a few weeks, much like what we did at the 2021 top. So again, watching for clues. Divergence may trigger a reversal at the trend line of resistance, but it is still very possible that Bitcoin reaches 100,000. We came to just right under 100,000 at the high 99,000 area. With the sell-off so far, which again I warned you was going to happen, I warned you on Sunday, just as the Monday session was beginning, before the sell-off started, I warned you, you're going to see those divergences play out, get a sell-off, and we've sold off just over 9% so far. Now we're rebounding back up. What I'll be looking for is the selling done now, or is it going to resume? And this is nothing more than a counter trend. Do we get a bigger sell-off? Do we get a more mild sell-off here and still try to go to new highs? Looking for clues that can play out either way. And again, momentum is bearish on the daily chart. The trend is still bullish, and the signals are still bullish in the weekly time frame. I'll be watching to see if we get a close above the 10 period. Do we stay above it? Probably. Volume here over the holiday and on into Black Friday. Watching here, do we close strong or do we close weak here the day ahead of Thanksgiving? In my last update, I told you that if Bitcoin could bounce off the 59 area, which it did do, get an immediate rebound, which we are getting, or if it drifts down to the 50 area or just slightly under it, we could get a rebound. If we get a bigger sell-off, then try to rebound. But I talked about that 59 level on the RSI and the 50 level on the RSI. We did bounce off the 59 area, which is important level of support on the RSI. You might note that, again, with our bounce off the 100 period here, I talked about that. Again, remember, we predicted a pullback here, and I told you we were going to bounce off the 100 period moving average. I'm a big believer in the 100 period moving average. We're expected to rally up to this area here, and then we were watching to see, could the bulls regain control? They did, or would the bears just back down in this area or at the 77, 78,000 area, just about $4,000 above this peak right here. Bulls won. The bears won back over here. The bulls won over here. And again, my signals have been consistently bullish since 52,000. And we now have bounce off the 59 level that I talked about in my last update. Doesn't mean the selling's over, but I told you we can get a bounce there or a bottom, one or the other, if we try to form a divergence or get a counter trend and then sell off further. So again, but that 59 area, we take that out. This 50 area is the next level of support on the RSI, and if you take that out, that would be extremely bearish, going into negative territory and remaining there. So again, the two levels of support, 59 on the RSI and the 50 area here, 49.50 area here on the RSI, should we see this rally fail. So we're going to be watching if momentum can flip back to bullish, or do we get a bigger sell-off with Bitcoin. Amazing that RSI bounced off the 59 area right on the nose, as I talked about in great length and detail in my last update. If I told you to be watching for a sell-off because of the divergence that formed. And I told you it looked very similar to the divergence at the March high over here. And again, I told you it could evolve into a larger triple divergence. Doesn't have to if we, get to, just under 100,000 and it's close but no cigar. But if we overthrow that level, again, we very well could see a triple divergence develop here on the RSI and a divergence develop on the MACD. Very possible if we can get a rebound right now, or again, if the RSI goes lower towards the 50 area or even beyond it, and then it turns back up, could see something like that. That would give us a bigger sell-off, followed by bound to a new high, or possibly to confirm a lower high if it's, again, close but no cigar. But again, my signals remain bullish. Momentum is bearish in the daily time frame. And again, momentum turns back to bullish, then again, we very well could see a larger divergence develop immediately. If momentum remains bearish, then again, this is nothing more than a counter trend. I'll be watching the momentum signals you'll see in this video. I'll be watching them over the holiday here. Divergence could just give us a reversal off of the trend lines just under 100,000, but it very well could be overthrow them, go to 102, 103, 104, 105,000 or something like that, and then turn down. Go to my next target level of resistance, 110,000 to 115,000. If we clear that level and continue to see strength, if we revert back to bullish with momentum in the daily time frame. These are the levels I'm watching. Should we exceed the previous high at 99,000 area? But I'm keeping an eye on the possibility of a triple divergence here or confirmation of a lower high. Both scenarios are possible. The bearish scenario to play out, we'd have to see my signals all revert back to bearish. My signals, which are correct, remain bullish. I told you to be looking for a dollar sell-off to pull back. We broke out above this level. I told you we could see a pullback back to the trend line, or again, if we went a little bit higher, back to horizontal resistance there. Right now, we've pushed above it and we're pulling back at the moment. Again, this looks exactly like the setup we had with the Bitcoin top in 2021. So it's very problematic, especially with recession coming. Listen carefully. The Bitcoin rally may continue to much higher levels. Saying if the recession hits in the first quarter or 2024 ends in December, early on in the second quarter of 2025, again, it could be problematic for a longer term bullish case for Bitcoin. But the shorter bullish cases up to the levels that we're at right now, the trend lines above that, the 110, 115,000, going to get recession. We might top within that range. Those two trend lines of resistance, two levels, I should say, of trend lines, talked about in the weekly time frame in this video and in the past. Again, not had a significant downturn in the economy, real bear market in the stock market with recession, with Bitcoin history. The only thing we've had is a brief recession that we've had huge intervention. They did that again. If they passed out checks again, the government checks, and if the Fed did QE, the Fed's going to lower rates and do an emergency cut, but they can't drop rates down to nothing yet and do QE 0.0. They can't do that because inflation will come roaring back. We're going to have a recession. It's going to deal with the inflation problem, but inflation will likely take up initially as it did in 2007. This dollar is doing what it did at the Bitcoin top and the NASDAQ peak over here. Again, we broke this trend line right here, okay? And then we broke this trend line right here. Similar thing here. We broke this trend line. We back tested it. We went down here. We found support at the 200-week moving average and horizontal support zone. And we bounced. We had this big surge back above the broken trend line. And we broke this downward trend line right here from this peak right here. And it looks like my trend line moved on me. Hang on. And this trend line right here. I love this program, but sometimes you hit save and the trend lines move on you. So again, that's a little annoying, but nice looking charts. Anyways, we're getting this pullback. For the week, the dollar is down 1.38%. We've had this winning streak of just going parabolic. Again, it's likely going to pull back. Eventually, Bitcoin can join it. Now over here, we broke the trend line, and then broke over above horizontal resistance. We got above it, and that's when Bitcoin peaked. Pulled back, NASDAQ and Bitcoin peaked, and then it pulled back, and S&P peaked. The dollar soared, and Bitcoin and the NASDAQ tanked. Bitcoin dropped 78%, NASDAQ dropped 37.5%. So again, I believe that Bitcoin is at risk of topping at this level that we're at now, or the next level of resistance, or just overthrowing the level we're currently at. I'm looking for clues, but again, my signals remain bullish. As long as my signals remain bullish, Bitcoin can go a whole lot higher. So I'm watching the dollar here, and if we do pull back again, eventually Bitcoin could reverse. Dollar could end up going higher as it did over here, and Bitcoin could top and begin to sell off. By the time the dollar broke out right here, and November of 2021, by January, Bitcoin had dropped 52%. So do keep that in mind. The dollar's doing the exact same thing it did at the top, the 2021 top. Some of my other indicators right here. This is looking at the swing move, the larger swing move after the 52,000 low. Bullish about 58, 59,000 in there, and has been consistently bullish, finding support at the lower end of the cloud. For reversal is to happen, or a bigger pullback, we'd have to see red here. Right now we're pulling back. We've dropped 9%, but again, nowhere near this level. So again, the possibility of going above that 100,000 area, and if we do, below 100,000 area, or rising as high as the 110, 115,000 resistance area. Here you got a green cloud, momentum remains positive. Even with the pullback, short-term momentum, the momentum for the trend is still bullish at this point. So I'll be watching, is this a counter trend? Is this going to take us to a new high and form a divergence, a triple divergence on some indicators? Here we had a divergence on a lot of indicators that has given us this 9% pullback to the 20 period moving average. The trend is still bullish. Momentum is still bearish. Momentum and the trend still bullish in the weekly time frame. The bulls remain in control. Watching to see if triple divergences try to develop immediately, or if we get a counter trend and start to try to go lower. Should trend signals turn bearish. Oh, my other indicators. Here we have momentum bearish. We're again seeing the ribbon bearish. We drop below the ribbon, but this line right here, the lower end of the cloud, represents the trend, and we're bouncing off of it. We lose that level, we get a bigger sell-off. If we bounce off this level, we can flip momentum back to bullish. Momentum is turning bearish short term here. And again, I warned about that. The sell-off happened there at the close on Sunday evening, moving on into the Monday session as it just started. I warned about that back on Sunday.